If you have your Bibles, we're looking at Matthew chapter 10 this morning. Matthew chapter 10 is a verse and a chapter to talk about Jesus sending out his disciples. And in this chapter, Jesus is in the middle part of his ministry. He's probably only been ministering for about a year or so, maybe a year and a half. And he sends out his disciples for the first time. He says, guys, this is what's going to happen. I'm sending you out, and here's where it's gonna go. You're gonna have all these things happen to you, and all these things are gonna transpire, and all these things are gonna go on. There's gonna be some people that are gonna think you're great, and there's gonna be other people that think you're idiots. There's gonna be people who accept your message and say, "Yeah, this is good stuff," and there's other people that are gonna say, "Nah, not for me." You know, I ask myself sometimes, if you don't like Jesus, who do you like? Where's the better plan? You got a better plan for how to live and how to be and what God's supposed to look like and what life is supposed to be like? I mean, nope. What's your plan? You got a better one? Let's hear it. I mean, really, why doesn't everybody want to do what's right? Why doesn't everybody just want to do good things? Why do we insist on chaos and problems? What is it about us? That's why I asked you to think about who you were this morning from the very beginning of the service. Say, who am I? Who do I want to be? What's that supposed to look like? You say, well, let me just tell you something, Pastor Matt. The patterns of my life got all messed up from day one. You know, I was born into a broken world, and I had a broken family, and I'm broken, and things aren't great because things have never been great. I've had a tough time since I started this life, and the patterns that have woven themselves around me are all messed up. Well, let me just tell you something. I've got this beautiful rug in my house, and it's a really cool rug. But when you flip it over, it's chaos. There's cords and threads and things going everywhere. There's all kinds of things that don't really make a whole lot of sense. But then when you turn it over, you can see the beautiful pattern that's there, and you can see that it all looks a whole lot better from the other side. Yeah. And sometimes that's how we are in life. You know, we can only see the one side. We can only see the side that's the bottom of the rug, you know, so to speak. We're not looking at the side that God's looking at. And He's creating a beautiful tapestry through our lives that only He can see.
That's right.
We can't see it because we're on the other side. It's kind of like what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13 when he says, now we see through a glass darkly. In other words, we're looking through this glass and we can't really see the reflection of what God's doing in our lives. And sometimes we go through pain and sometimes we go through suffering in our lives. Matter of fact, Jesus told His disciples, and I won't take time to read the whole chapter, but He tells His disciples in chapter 10, look, you are going to only be successful if you learn how to take up your cross and follow me. You're only going to find your life if you lose it, if you give it up. You're only going to truly find the blessing of who you need to be as you give everything you are to this cause of truth. And when he begins the chapter, he talks to them about who they are, and they're named by name, and then he talks about sending them out. And as he talks about sending them out, he quotes from the Old Testament. He quotes from Micah chapter 7 and verse 6. And he says, you know, you think I came to bring peace, but I came for more than that. And as he quoted Micah chapter 7, he talked about the times that Micah was talking about where people were not serving God, not doing what God wanted them to do, not behaving the way that they were supposed to behave. You know, when the angels came to Bethlehem to the shepherds, you remember the song they sang, glory to God in the highest, peace on earth to whom His favor rests? That's what the angels sang when Jesus was born. And now Jesus is telling His disciples, look, these days that we live in are full of wickedness, and they're full of people that aren't doing what's right. And you're going to walk out into the middle of all that, and you're going to proclaim the truth. And that's not easy to do. That's difficult sometimes. How many of you have found it easy to walk up to people and start a conversation about how much Jesus Christ means to you? And how he's your Lord and Savior, and how much of a blessing he is. No, that's not an easy conversation to have sometimes, is it? People look at you like you are whacked out. Like, what is wrong with you? And why is Jesus so important to you? Why does he even matter to you? Why do you even care about Jesus? I want you to know that the transformational power that the disciples were taking with them, of the truth of who Jesus was no easier in their day than it is in ours. It was just as difficult for them to go and do the things that Jesus was telling them to do as it is for any one of us. And when you ask yourself who you are this morning, when you think about who you are, I wrote this song not to brag about how the patterns of life were weaving themselves around me in perfect patterns, and how everything was wonderful. I wrote that thinking about the ways in which the only things that really matter in life are the things that can't be bought. I can't buy love. I mean, I can buy an artificial type of love, but I can't really buy true love and what that means. I can't buy joy. I can't pay for it with any earthly currency. The real joy that comes from knowing I'm doing what's right. I'm following after God. I'm making the right choices and the right decisions. Because it's difficult. But Jesus ends this chapter to his disciples with a tremendous promise. And he begins to talk to them about their value. And he said, I want you to know I got every hair on your head numbered. I want you to know that I care, that God cares about the sparrows that fall to the ground. At the end of chapter 10, he says, look, you have tremendous value to me. And just as he's telling his disciples those words, I want you to hear those words as well. That you have tremendous value to God. He sees you, he knows all about you, and he's looking at the other side of the rug. He's looking at the beautiful side of what he's making you to be. You may see a bunch of knots, and you may see a bunch of things that don't make sense. Because the side that he's looking at is the side that he's working on. He's not working on the underside where you can't see what's going on. He's working on the beautiful side. And as you allow him to weave his love and his mercy and his grace into your life, stop trying to control where the pattern is going. Step back from it and say, God, okay, you're in charge. No matter what, no matter where, no matter how, no matter who, I'm going to say yes to whatever you want me to do and whatever you want me to be. That's what the disciples had to say. That's what they had to say when they were being led away to their own deaths. Many of them died for their faith. As a matter of fact, the only one that lived to any length of time was John, who wrote Revelation. As a matter of fact, I have a friend of mine named Enoch who's from India. And he's part of a small Christian community that's been in India for thousands of years. And just within the last 10 years, they sent the bones of Thomas, the Apostle Thomas, back to Rome. Think about that, after 2,000 years. And the story is that Thomas, Doubting Thomas, he was down in India as an evangelist, and somebody put a spear through him. Fortunately, he led a few people to the Lord before that happened, so the church continued. But that was his life. That was what he, When you start proclaiming Christ to the people around you, it can get kind of awkward. It can get difficult. It can be like, what? Come on, really? You believe all that stuff? Nah, come on, really? Nah. You know what? I've noticed that the parties don't start at 7 a.m. What I mean by that is if you want to go out and get drunk, if you want to go out and be promiscuous, if you want to go out and party and do all the things that partiers do, they don't start in the morning.
Right.
Why is that? Well, Jesus taught about this, and the Apostle Paul taught about this, and through the New Testament they taught about this, and it says that men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. That's why the parties don't start at 7 a.m. Ask yourself if you'll be the same person at 10 o'clock at night as you will be at 10 o'clock in the morning. What's the difference? The sun's still up, it's just on the other side of the world. What is it about darkness that creates this temptation and all this stuff that happens? There's something significant to it. It's because you are a different person in the daylight than you are in the dark. No. You're still the same person. You're just allowing yourselves to think that there's things you can get away with in the dark that you can't get away with in the sunlight. Right? Only reason. What's the difference? Why is darkness associated with evil even 2,000 years ago in the Bible? Why is Jesus sending out his disciples to proclaim the truth and telling them they're going to come up against the struggles and the trials of life and the pain of life? When Jesus told those disciples to take up their crosses and follow him, he hadn't even died on the cross yet. They didn't even know what they were going to be up against. He didn't know. What's God asking you today to do that you're resisting? And you're saying, that's just not who I am. I don't want to do that. God, that's not who I am. I don't want to be that. Is there anything in your life that you're resisting? Because if there is, God cannot do in you what he wants to do. Because you're putting up a wall, a barrier against that. There's nothing more miserable in this world than a person who's trying to do what's right over here and trying to do what's wrong over here. I'm a sailor, and every time I go down to the dock and I get into my little boat there that takes me out to my sailboat, I remind myself, when you make a choice, be all in. Because if you're standing on the dock and trying to stand on the boat at the same time, it does not work. Ask me how I know. You're either going to stay on the dock or you're going to get in the boat. But you got to do one or the other. You can't do both. So if you're struggling right now in your spiritual walk, you say, Pastor, man, that's totally me right now. I want to do what's right over here, but then there's something here. Ooh, that sounds fun too. You know? If you're that person this morning, I want to encourage you to find the joy of who you are and knowing who you are, what God wants you to be, by being all in.
Amen.
And saying, God, everything I am is yours. Everything I'm ever going to be is yours. Because that's how heroes are made. You'll never find a hero who didn't suffer pain. There's no story of any hero who didn't suffer pain. You want to be a hero today? You're going to have to pay a price. It's not going to happen by accident. Look at all the stories and all the movies and all the books you've ever read. Every hero suffered. I think of those guys at Thermopylae, the pass at Thermopylae. Persian army, literally in the tens of thousands coming. Some estimates say that the Persian army had over 200,000 men. They're standing in this tiny little pass at Thermopylae with 300 Spartans and some assorted Thracians and other Grecians, and there was probably about 4,000 or 5,000 of them. But with the 300 Spartans and King Leonidas, they stood there and they held off an entire army of hundreds of thousands of people. Now that's pretty amazing. That story has been told over and over and over and over again. And there's even a crazy cartoonish type movie that came out a couple of years ago called The 300. How many of you ever saw that movie? That's crazy. One of the things that they said in the movie, though, that was actually true, was what King Leonidas said to the emissary of the Persian king. The emissary of the Persian king said, you guys just need to give up right now. He said, we're going to shoot so many arrows at you that you will no longer be able to see the sun. And King Leonidas' response was then, great, we'll be able to fight in the shade. I mean, that was his response. I mean, okay, that's the kind of guy I want to be around. Don't give me no whippy, wussy, mealy-mouthed Christian guy to hang around with. Who's always got to be, oh, well, I don't know if I want to do that or not. No, come on. We want to be heroes of the faith. We want to be men of power and strength and light. Amen. We want to be able to say to the people around us, hey, if you've got a better plan to serve in Jesus, let me know what it is. Let me know how to better love your family. Let me know how to better be a good man for your community and a good person at work or whatever you do with your life. Tell me what the better plan is. And let's do that. In the meantime, if there's no better plan, then stop being stuck on stupid. It's not complicated. But you know, our addictions come to us, our lusts, our desires, all that stuff comes at us. And we so easily compromise everything we could ever be by making choices that weave patterns around our lives that are of our own making. God help us. God help us. Those disciples, they took the commands from Jesus and they went out. They were faithful to the call. They listened to what Jesus said, and every one of them, almost to a man, gave their lives for the cause they believed in. I know it's kind of cheesy, and I know it may sound a little corny, but I want to be a hero. I want to be the person who, when everybody else fails, and when everybody else gives up, and when everybody else is in despair, and when everybody else says it can't be done, and when everybody else says it'll never happen, and when everybody says you'll never make it, I'm the one that says, with the optimism that only comes from heaven, that says, wait a second. I'm not just here under my steam. I'm not just here under my power. I'm not just here under my strength. I'm standing next to the Lord of heaven. And the hosts of heaven are with me. And you better watch out because we're coming. And there's no stopping us.
That's right. Amen.
You see, the story that we tell is not just about what's happening here on earth. The story that we tell is about the heavenly host that we stand with. When we stand on the side of righteousness, and we stand on the side of justice, and we stand on the side of honor, and we stand on the side of integrity, there can be no stopping that
Amen.
army.
Amen.
And that's who I'm with. That's who I am. Do I have it all figured out? No. Am I perfect? No. Do I have all the patterns of my life perfectly in place? No. But when the stitches of time have created the one that I someday hope to be, may the mirror reflect back the face of someone who's glad to be called me. Not because of me, but because of God working in me and through me. What Jesus has done for me in forgiving my sin. What the Holy Spirit is doing for me and as He helps me to have the strength to make the right decisions. And He's my comforter, my guide, and my counselor. And the presence of God is with me as I walk through this life to become the person that He's called me to be. That's the message of who I am this morning. That's the message of what a disciple of Jesus looks like. I'm asking you to consider joining me in that. I'm asking you to consider what it means to live a life that when the painting is all done, and all the things have been painted about who we are, people will see Jesus. And they'll see the transformation of what happens when a man or a woman of God turns their life over to Jesus and says yes to everything He wants us to do.
Amen.
Everything Jesus asks us to do is good for us. Did you know that? There's only two things He really asks us to do. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. If you haven't learned how to love yourself, you never learn how to love your neighbor. How do you learn how to love yourself? Just look at God and say, God, you created me in your likeness and your image. I'm going to let you weave the patterns of life around me and do the things you want me to do. I thought about this painting today, and as we've been watching Vince paint this, I thought about Jesus, and I thought about the price that He paid. He said there's no greater love than a man would lay down his life for his friends. Jesus did that. He showed us His love and His mercy and His grace. And I thought about the people of this church, and I thought about some of the things that you're going through in life. And I thought about different ways in which you've struggled with life. And we don't have a large church. I know pretty much everybody here. I know who you are, and I know what you're going through sometimes. And I get the privilege of partnering together with you in your life, and I've seen people struggle with health issues, and I've seen people struggle with family issues. I've seen people struggle with the issues of life that to a lesser person would completely cause them to despair. But we have some wonderful people of God who love God and love each other, and they are my heroes of the faith.